I cannot believe what I found today, but I think we have to admit America's strategic Bitcoin reserve is finished. It's over. And that's because this report dropped today that confirmed that America has been quietly and silently selling its Bitcoin. And this new report came out in the exact same month that Donald Trump said this.
The U.S. government has foolishly sold tens of thousands of additional Bitcoin that were worth billions and billions of dollars had they not sold them, but they did sell them, mostly during the Biden administration. Not a good thing to have done. From this day on, America will follow the rule that every Bitcoin knows very well: never sell your Bitcoin. That's a little phrase that they have. I don't know if that's right or not. Who the hell knows, right? Who knows? Who knows? But so far, it's been right. And well, let's keep it that way.
So this clip came out in November 2025. And Donald Trump, as you just heard him, very clearly said, we know that the US government has been foolishly selling tens of thousands of Bitcoin. So that's what he said. Now, today we had this new report surface that showed us that in the month of November, the Bitcoin that was seized through the prosecution of the Samurai wallet developers has now been sold. So this is what everybody's talking about today. And what's really special about this is now the first time that the employees have literally acted in defiance of direction from the federal government. So as we can see, this directly violates an executive order that was written by Donald Trump earlier in the year. And again, I do not want to understate the significance of this. We've never seen government employees defy an executive order like this before. So what exactly has happened? Let's break it down, because this is kind of insane when we think about it. We've talked about this executive order written by Donald Trump in March earlier in the year. Now, I've kind of poked fun at this for different reasons until today, because in this executive order, you can see in the second paragraph, it says that within 30 days of the date of this order, each agency shall review its authorities to transfer any government Bitcoin held by it to the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and they must submit a report reflecting the result of the review to the Secretary of the Treasury. So again, until today, I've been skeptical of Trump's strategic Bitcoin reserve, and I've been asking the question, where is this formal review? They were supposed to submit it within 30 days of March 2025. We've never gotten it. It's been 10 months now, and we don't know how much Bitcoin America holds in its strategic Bitcoin reserve. And I think the report that's come out today might maybe just suggest why we don't have America's strategic Bitcoin reserve. Maybe it's because they don't have one. That's a little bit of wild speculation. But again, just hang with me here for a moment. Let's not forget, this week, America's invaded Venezuela. There's rumors that Venezuela has 600,000 Bitcoin. What happens if America gets their hands on that? That's a question. Another really interesting question to consider is, if you now have states officially define executive orders telling them they cannot sell Bitcoin, what does this mean for America? Does this mean blue states like New York and California will just completely defy all of the other federal executive orders passed in America? Let's not forget, Donald Trump publicly, he's opposed to CBDCs. He said that's not happening. We don't want digital IDs. But we're watching states all across America roll out digital IDs in the form of driving licenses. We're watching rent controls being talked about in New York. I've got some wild videos to play for you guys towards the end of today's stream with some really interesting comments coming out of New York and their plan for property owners. Just keep that in the back of your mind if right now states are completely defying executive orders and they're not listening to them. They're selling the Bitcoin. And again, just while I'm on that topic, think about it as well. A lot of people have been pondering, why is Bitcoin decorrelated from silver, gold, and the equity markets since October? A lot of people have been saying, okay, we've had a disappointing 2025. Why is the price not rallied? Has the US government sold the 200,000 Bitcoin they're supposed to have? And what kind of impact would that have on the price if they get their hands on the 600,000 Bitcoin that Venezuela might have, and then they sell that? Just some more questions I want you guys to keep in the back of your mind as we kind of dive into this story here. So what is it? What happened? So Samurai Wallet developers recently prosecuted, and as we can see, it seems the US Marshal Service has sold the 6.3 million worth of Bitcoin that these developers paid the DOJ as a fee that was a part of their guilty plea. In doing so, it has potentially violated Executive Order 14233. That was what we just showed you. This was the executive order signed in March, which has so far amounted to absolutely diddly squat. Nada, nothing. The US government's not only not buying Bitcoin, but in Trump's words, they've sold tens of thousands. So again, this isn't just speculation. We have the official report. We have the admittance. We even have the on-chain addresses. So look at this. I was doing a little bit of digging. Let's read this. So the Bitcoin was sent from this address on November 3rd, 2025. Again, this was 2 weeks before Donald Trump said that the US government has sold tens of thousands of Bitcoin. When he said this, some people were saying, look, maybe he's just making inflammatory comments. Again, we haven't had a public audit showing us how much Bitcoin the US Treasury owns. We have no idea yet. It's been 10 months since we were supposed to get a report within 30 days. We still don't have it. But some people were hopeful. They were optimistic. Now we have confirmation the US government has been selling some Bitcoin. Now, again, this is only $6 million worth of Bitcoin. As we can see from the report, this amounts to somewhere around 57 Bitcoin. But if we have confirmation they've sold 57, what's happened to the other 190,000? Now, again, this is the official address. So this is, some people will say it's a negative, but this is one of the positives of Bitcoin. You can track addresses on chain. You force a little bit of transparency from the government. As you can see, when you click on that address, this was the address that supposedly received 57 Bitcoins, 6 million of it in November. What happened? Well, now it is completely empty. So this is where people are now beginning to ask the question. What is happening? Why are the US Marshals officially not listening to executive orders signed by the federal government? And what does this mean for the future of Bitcoin? I got some interesting rabbit holes to dive into. Before we get into the New York curveball that I think we could be watching, again, I'll remind you guys of a very, very important clip of Scott Bessent. And before we get there, again, this is not just rumors and speculation today. Cynthia Lummis, a sitting US senator, tweeted this morning. Why is the US government still liquidating Bitcoin when President Trump explicitly directed these assets to be preserved for our strategic Bitcoin reserve? We can't afford to squander strategic assets while other nations are accumulating Bitcoin. I'm deeply concerned by this report. So again, we have on-chain analytics. We have very official-looking reports. And we have senators asking the question, why is America selling its Bitcoin? Why is it not buying its Bitcoin? Were we all sold a lie when they said they were looking for budget-neutral ways to acquire Bitcoin? Because they've been looking for 10 months for these budget-neutral ways, and they haven't bought anything. I'll remind you of what Scott Bessent, the US Treasury Secretary, said in August. And again, this was on August 13th, 2025. He said this on Fox News, which I think was a little bit of an accidental admission, so to say?
Again, as a store of value for the American people. We've also started to get into the 21st century, a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We're not going to be buying that, but we are going to use confiscated assets and continue to build that up. We're going to stop selling that.
We're going to stop selling that. So again, you've got the US Treasury Secretary saying we're going to stop selling Bitcoin. You've got Donald Trump saying we foolishly sold tens of thousands of Bitcoin. And now we have official confirmation from a report that they sold a small amount of Bitcoin. Yes, a small amount. I understand that. But I think this could be confirmation of a trend.
You know, I believe that Bitcoin reserve at today's prices is somewhere between 15 and 20 billion.
And Mr. Secretary, all of these ideas to monetize the asset side of the balance sheet of America, is that partly the beginnings of this sovereign wealth fund that you spoke about in your hearing back in January?
I think that these are all standalone ideas, and that as we get more into them, it will require legislation. We'll do it through statute to create a fund to hold these and to oversee them in a good way for the American people, for future generations.
So this interview that Scott Bessent gave was essentially him just pouring a big bucket of cold water on all of these positive developments, rumors that were circulating in mid-2025. They were talking about all of these ways of budget-neutral ways to buy more Bitcoin. People were talking about revaluing the gold and taking those hundreds of billions of dollars of capital to buy more Bitcoin. And Bessent on the mainstream news said that. And then what's very interesting is this. I went all the way back to Bessent's Twitter account, his official Twitter account, to show you what he tweeted on this day. Because, again, this interview was given on August 14th, 2025. Now, I went all the way back on Scotty B's Twitter account, and I found this. Again, on 2:46, a couple of hours after he was on Fox Business giving that interview, he said, oh, well, actually, Bitcoin that has been forfeited to the federal government will be the foundation of the strategic Bitcoin reserve that President Trump established in his March executive order. In addition, Treasury is committed to exploring budget-neutral pathways to acquire more Bitcoin to expand the reserve and to execute on the president's promise to make the United States the Bitcoin superpower of the world. So again, this is essentially a 180 pivot to what I think he accidentally said on Fox earlier that day. Again, the timing of all of this is fascinating. It's interesting. But I think all of it forces us to ask the question, how much Bitcoin does America actually hold? Do they hold 200,000? I highly doubt it. Can we trust Scott Bessent when he says, oh, well, we hold $15 billion at today's prices? I highly doubt it. I don't think we can trust it. The next question we have to ask is if states like New York are selling Bitcoin, completely defying federal executive orders, then how far can these states go? Because right now, New York is making some interesting moves, some really interesting moves that doesn't make me very optimistic on our chances of seeing freedom spread all across America. I don't see it. Partially because what I find fascinating is, actually, you know what? Before I get to that, I'm going to get to New York and what I think is coming down the pipeline for everybody very soon, and why I think what we're seeing in New York is essentially what we're seeing in Europe and the UK with all of their plans for digital IDs and CBDCs. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think what's coming from those countries, we might see served up on a silver platter in more states in America than you might expect. Before I get there, again, to kind of add to the intrigue of this story, Donald Trump tweeted this yesterday. I believe this is on Truth Social. He comes out and he says America will be the undisputed leader in digital assets. Nobody will do it better. It is pure genius. Digital assets are the future and our nation is going to own it. We are talking about massive investment and big innovation. Look at the date. That's Jan 5. This was the same day that we got this report dropped about the DOJ openly violating Trump's executive order. Now, again, just putting puzzle pieces together here. But when was the last time that Trump talked about Bitcoin publicly, whether it was on Twitter or Truth Social? Weeks ago. Is it a coincidence? He comes out and he says, we want to be the leader on the same day that we get a report proving that states are violating his executive order and they're selling Bitcoin. Could be a coinky dink. I don't think so. And again, if you think about it, if you really start thinking about it, maybe I'm, what's the meme? Connecting all these dots that aren't there. But Trump just invaded another country. He invaded Venezuela. They're now going to try to take control of the 303 billion barrels of oil in Venezuela. He's talked about taking Greenland. He's telling the Colombian president he better watch his ass. He's talking about a lot of these bigger picture moves. Again, they just pulled off the invasion of Venezuela a couple of days ago, and he's tweeting about Bitcoin. Makes you think maybe there is some truth to the rumors about Venezuela holding 600,000 Bitcoin. And again, for me to be maybe a little bit assured that America is actually going to hold Bitcoin and actually going to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and actually create a country that respects freedom and doesn't force CBDCs or digital IDs on its people, why not say, yes, a report came out today, they foolishly sold some more Bitcoin in November. Makes you wonder, which is where I begin wondering. Now, again, everything we've covered so far, it's just truth. We have a report showing that America's selling Bitcoin. And it's not just America, it is New York, the New York state selling Bitcoin. Because where were the Samurai wallet developers prosecuted? Is in the state of New York. Here it is, the Sovereign District of New York. The SDNY, the Sovereign District of New York, seems to have acted in a manner that defies the executive order's mandate to transfer Bitcoin obtained via criminal forfeiture to the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Oh, here we go. This would not mark the first time that the SDNY has acted in such a manner. The judicial jurisdiction, that's a mouthful, sometimes referred to as the District of New York, has earned a reputation for operating independently, despite being part of a federal system. So they don't care. If Donald Trump says we're outlawing central bank digital currencies and digital IDs, they're not going to follow it. They don't give a shit. What are they going to do? Well, again, the timing of all of this is fascinating. But this week, New York seems to be on a rampage because the mayor is now saying that South Africa is the model for New York. Now, it's not until you really dive into the statistics does that become a little bit of a head scratcher. Because South Africa has 32% unemployment, 45% youth unemployment, the highest inequality on earth. Again, what happens with socialism and communism? Huge inequality. Well, actually, that's not true. You get massive equality between the 1% and the 99%, but the top 1% owns everything. The bottom 99% is incredibly equal because they own nothing. This is what's happened in every single socialist or communist takeover in the 20th century. Look at Russia in the, I believe, late 1920s. Look at China in, I think it's the 5-year famine they had in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Again, not to mention the tens of millions of deaths that occurred in the countries that went full-blown socialist. Don't worry about that. It is now, careful with what I say, New York now wants to, as Zoran Mamdani said this week, what did he say? We want to embrace the warmth of collectivism. Let me get the exact quote so I don't get myself in trouble. But I believe he said something along the lines of, we need to get rid of this rugged capitalism. I'll get the quote. So anybody new doesn't think I've completely lost my mind, but we did cover this in a live stream for you guys earlier in the week. Again, if you're not subscribed, I will welcome you to subscribe. It is 2026. I have a ton of interesting content planned for you guys this year. So again, I welcome everyone. If you want to be notified when all of these deep dives happen, there's a little subscribe button down below. But for subscribers who saw it, we talked about this earlier in the week. Zoran Mamdani will replace rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. Direct quote. I've got another 3 videos to play for you guys today, so I'm not going to play that video, but you guys all saw it. It's an official video. It was shocking. It was interesting. But why would you embrace collectivism? And why would you say that South Africa is the model of New York when South Africa right now is, let's put it lightly, just not faring too well? In South Africa, the top 0.01% own 15% of the wealth. The bottom 50% has negative net worth. Think about that. The bottom 50% has a negative net worth. That's what I just said. Everyone between, well, the bottom 99% essentially own nothing. They have 330 days of blackouts per year. Their energy grid does not work. There's a few other horrific things in here that I don't even want to mention. Crime through the roof, assaults through the roof. 4th highest murder rate on the planet. That's South Africa. And New York is openly saying South Africa is the model. Makes you ask the question. Now, this is where things get even more strange. Because this week, Zoran Mamdani made a very interesting, very, very interesting hire for a part of his government. Mamdani's new advocate for tenants has said that home ownership is a weapon of white supremacy. I wish what I was reading was not true, but as we can see, the executive director of the mayor's office to protect tenants has said some, let's just say, really, really strange things in the past. Again, this video has got 8 million views on Twitter. It's gone mega viral, and I'm sure you guys can figure out why.
Individualized good and not a collective good. I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
What? That's a real interview, by the way. This lady is officially working for the government of New York. She's officially employed. And again, it's not just her who has made interesting comments about this. Mamdani has defended his proposal of taxing richer, whiter neighborhoods. he said that, you'd think maybe that was a Freudian slip of the tongue, but he actually defended what he said. I'll play that video for you guys in a moment, as well as another, let's say, head scratcher that I found from that lady. I think before we get to those videos, I'll remind you, this is why I commonly remind you guys that the only thing you actually own in the world is Bitcoin. And you only own it if you hold it in one of these. These are hardware wallets. Again, do you think holding Bitcoin on an exchange in New York is wise when you now have the New York mayor openly saying, we need to reimagine property ownership in our great state? I don't think so. I think you're playing with fire and you're asking for trouble, which is why I always encourage you guys. Step 1, buy some Bitcoin. Step 2, get it off an exchange. Put it in one of these. Put it in a hardware wallet. Again, highly recommend you get your hands on a great hardware wallet from Trezor or Ledger. Both have some incredible options. There is links to both Ledger and Trezor down below in the description. Again, put your Bitcoin in self-custody. It is beyond a need at this point because these people are coming. These people are absolutely coming not just for your Bitcoin. They're coming for any assets you hold. You're going to want to listen to this clip from New York's brand new mayor because he kind of says the quiet parts out loud in this one.
A year?
More than years.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani inspecting broken floor tiles in an apartment on Clarkson Avenue in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, getting a first-hand look at the deteriorating conditions, from an eroding bathtub surface to a rust-covered, corroded bathroom pipe and red paint splashed about.
And you told the landlord about this?
Yes.
And what was the response?
Call some numbers, but nobody want to do anything about it.
Residents in this same building and in others owned by the landlord Pinnacle Realty say they've experienced similar conditions, from leaking bathroom ceilings to moldy drywall. Tenant unions rallying in response, demanding stronger tenant protections. We are the tenants! We are the tenants! On his first day in office, Mamdani made his first major policy announcement, signing 3 executive orders aimed at protecting tenants and fast-tracking housing across the city. He said this building, along with 92 others owned by the same landlord, is currently in bankruptcy proceedings and set to be auctioned off to a new owner, one who also ranks among the city's worst landlords.
In those buildings alone, there are more than 5,000 open hazardous violations and 14,000 complaints. This is an untenable situation. So today we are announcing that we will be taking action in the bankruptcy case, stepping in to represent the interests of the city and the interests of the tenants and say once and for all who this government will be fighting for.
The mayor also reestablishing the city's office to protect tenants with a mission to defend tenants' rights and intervene quickly when they face illegal living conditions. It's a step that gives tenants like Mildred Ross hope.
To hear this executive order is something we're really excited about.
Okay, so as we can see, property is about to be reimagined in the great state of New York. They're not only going to come for your Bitcoin, let me give you a little bit of a glimpse of what they're going to come for next, because we've got some digging to do. So Zohran Mamdani has appointed Sia Weaver in an official government position. She has said on multiple occasions, people like home ownership because they like control, which is rooted in a racist and classist society. This is why rent control is important. Now, what I found super interesting is I was doing some digging. Like I wasn't joking. I did a lot of digging for this video, and I found this. Found a Twitter thread, and let's just dive into it. So Michelle dove in, and she said, I dug in to Sia Weaver's Twitter history, and guess what? She deleted her X account accordingly. However, let's take a look at some of her quotes over the years. In 2018, she said, there is no such thing as a good gentrifier. Only people who are actively working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism. and people who aren't. Strange, don't you think? Let's dive into a couple more. Public housing for everyone. Rent control and public housing is for everyone. Massive government interventions will solve gentrification. Some more quotes from 2017 and 2022. This is a pattern of behavior. Rent control is a perfect solution to everything. Another quote, passing really strong rent control is a more effective way to shrink the value of real estate than reducing reasoning applications. This lady has become New York City's tenant director. And if you honestly think that New York is not going to come for your Bitcoin, I think you've lost your marbles. I think you're in for a welcome surprise. I think things are going to absolutely escalate. And I think you're going to need Bitcoin more than ever before, especially right now if the US government is selling their Bitcoin despite an executive order. Again, an executive order, this is like, you're not supposed to defy executive orders. I'm no expert on laws and regulations as it pertains to America. I'm Australian, if the dirty accent and shitty haircut didn't give it away. But I know that executive orders are supposed to be pretty final. And if we now have states in America selling their Bitcoin, this is when you've really got to start asking questions. This is when you've really got to start asking yourself, when do I move? This is why 300,000 people are leaving California every single year. Basic property rights are not being respected. We know that they're not being respected in Australia, Canada, Europe, the UK, Ireland. I had a headline about Ireland and Australia I wanted to show you. But this is where you need to start taking control over your own money. You cannot trust bureaucrats anymore. And before I get to Australia, I'll remind you guys, if you are holding your wealth on one of these, again, please do not make one of the first mistakes of Bitcoin. Do not have your Bitcoin backed up on paper. Put it on titanium. This is why I always encourage you guys to go and spend the 30 minutes that it takes stamping your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words into titanium. Not stainless steel, titanium. It survives temperatures 3 times higher than stainless steel. It should be the industry standard when it comes to metal backups for your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words. Stampseed is going to give you guys 15% off anything you want to buy with a promo code Luke15. So again, hardware wallet, titanium. And again, if you are looking to acquire some Bitcoin, I always encourage you to hit up my partner Blockware. They not only sell Bitcoin mining rigs directly, but they allow you to use their hosted mining service where you don't have to do any of the hard work. You just give them a Bitcoin address and you get paid out in Bitcoin. And your state, if you're living in New York, doesn't need to know where your money is because I'm telling you, they're coming for your money. Again, hit up Blockware. There's a link down below if you want to book a call with them to learn a little bit more. Now, again, right now in America, it is possible because of the big, beautiful bill that Donald Trump signed, it's possible to get a 100% depreciated write-off on any capital gains taxes by buying Bitcoin mining machines. Again, a lot of people are complacent. They think because Donald Trump's written something, it's going to be followed. It's going to last the test of times. I'm not so sure. Midterm elections are coming up. I would take advantage of those tax write-offs while you still can. So again, if you want to learn more about that, All Night Hiders slapped a link to Blockware in the live chat. So again, take advantage of that. Now again, I mentioned Venezuela earlier, but something else I want to mention was a lot of people think that what I mentioned about property in New York might just be hyperbole. Well, it's not, because I want to just remind you guys of what I think will come to New York. What I think is coming to New York and many blue states in America is what my government is rolling out right now. Now, I'll show you why I think that. Right now, Australia is rolling out digital IDs. We all know that. But what I think is really interesting is Australia has this. They call it a help to buy scheme. Now, what's happening is the federal government in Australia is, as you can see, they're taking a 30 to 40% stake in properties in Australia. Now, that doesn't make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It should. Because they're framing this as we're just here to help. What this actually, again, you guys can get conspiratorial. You know where I'm going to take this. But if the bank owns 40% of your property, if the government owns 40% of your property, what do you think that means when they start rolling out their digital ID system? I reminded you of the analogy. A digital ID is useless unless you've got a CBDC. Because once everybody's using a digital money that tracks all of their transactions, that's where the real danger lies. That's where the government can just turn you off one day, especially when they own 30 to 40% of your property, which is what's happening in America. And again, like I played you in the clip, this is what's coming in New York. They're openly saying we need to reimagine property. We need to end rugged individualism and embrace the warmth of collectivism. I still can't believe they've said that, but they're saying it. By the way, this comment reminded me, the UK and Australia has spare bedroom taxes. How dare you have a spare bedroom? Why won't you let somebody come and use that spare bedroom? To this comment, they can absolutely still freeze your assets. But I think what we're watching rolled out is just a complete control grid system. Again, it's not a conspiracy theory. Just look. Look at what the UK, Europe, and Australia and Canada is doing. And look at the things that's been slowly introduced into America, state by state, step by step. I'm not saying they're going to be successful. I think they're going to fail. But that doesn't mean they won't do a lot of damage in the interim. Trying to read all of your comments. There's a lot of you guys here today. Happy Tuesday to everyone tuning in. Love this comment. Again, this is at the crux of what I've talked about for 5 years on this channel. The world is full of problem identifiers. Again, there's a lot of libertarians who point out a lot of the problems in the world. But all of this is useless unless you give actionable solutions. That's what we always try to do on this channel. What are the actionable solutions? I know I had a chart to show you guys, but there are solutions. I mean, join the 300,000 people leaving California every year. You can just leave. You can go. 45 million people have left their home country. 45 million people live remotely. They work online. It's a beautiful thing about technology. You can still, let me reframe that. You get the best opportunities by working online. You don't have to live in New York or California or Germany or Sydney or Toronto or London. You don't have to live in those shitholes anymore to get the best opportunities. That was the industrial era. In the industrial age, you had to move to those big mega cities to get the best jobs and the best economic opportunities. That's reversed. The best opportunities are online right now. And it's the people moving first into the online space. They're the ones who are able to say, adios, hasta luego, I'm out of here. I'm not putting up with this shit. Again, I'm not just speaking theoretically. I left Australia 4 years ago. And I'm never going back, ever. It is doable. Anybody can do it. My man Francis, who's with me right now, he's from London. Guess what he said 6 months ago? Hasta luego. I'm out of here. He's giggling in the corner. So, again, I want you guys to know this is actionable. There are solutions. You can escape. You can just say, yeah, nah, rent controls. Flooding my country with people who don't like me. Not a fan of that. 60% taxes? How about you stop pissing on my back and telling me it's raining? I don't believe you. You can just say that. You can leave. Leaving is the best thing to do. You can never vote your way out of tyranny. I mean, the tyrants are telling you very clearly what's coming. They're telling you, we want to collapse your country. They're openly telling you, why would you raise your kids in these families? I don't know. I mean, again, I hope that's actionable. Again, it's 2026. Make a New Year's resolution. You don't have to put up with this crap. I don't. I'm done. Again, what I'd encourage everyone to do, anybody listening who's living in New York, London, California, Ireland, Sydney, Toronto. It's very difficult to leave your home country. Don't get me wrong. I get it. You need to think about, okay, what is my line in the sand? When do I leave? Because it's very easy to post-rationalize, after the fact or as it's happening because it's uncomfortable to leave. Again, a lot of people say, oh, why didn't everybody just leave Germany in the 1930s? It's because it's a little bit of a slippery slope and it's really uncomfortable to say, okay, that's my line. I need to leave. For me in 2020, as all of that was unfolding, I was very loud about the fact that I said it won't be 14 days to flatten the curve. You give a tyrant an inch and they'll take a mile. I was very loud and public about that in early 2020. Again, I never worn a face diaper. I just don't agree with it. But in the early 2020, I said, okay, I think I can see where this is going. I hope it doesn't go that way, but I need to prepare for it in case it does. My line in the sand was when door knocking began, checking medical statuses, I told myself, that's it, I'm gone. We got close enough to that in Australia, and I'm out of there. I'm never going back. And again, the reason why I'm never going back is because what you're going to see, 2020 wasn't a once-off. It was the new normal. They know how far they can push people, and it's very important. I talk about this all the time. If you look at the countries with the most amount of debt, just remind yourself how they acted in 2020. The most tyrannical countries and cities, coincidentally, are the ones with the most amount of debt. Canada, London, Australia, Sydney, blue states in America. Just remember that. And this is my thesis as well. If you're not gone by 2030, you're stuck. Do I open up another 10-minute tangent on that topic? So let me put it this way. I think the book, The Sovereign Individual, written in 1997, kind of laid it out really well. They said you're going to see, as you move from the industrial age to the information age, as everything gets digitized, you're going to see 100 million sovereign individuals leave the industrial era, work online, live remotely, and take advantage of the best opportunities in the digital age. This is, again, prophetic book. I love it. But this is what I think we're going to see unfold. 45 million people have left. If you extrapolate that trend out, I think a lot of the good opportunities are going to be gone by 2030. I think it's going to be much more difficult to leave. That's my quick answer to that comment. And by 2030, you're still going to have people fighting over left or right politics. And I think anybody, like if I was in London right now watching 30 people arrested every day for social media posts, even retweeting tweets, is getting you thrown in jail in the UK right now. If I had no money to leave, this is what I'd do. I'd sell a kidney. I would sell a kidney, but I think most people watching probably have a job or even government handouts. If I was getting $2,000 of money a month, I would live in poverty for 3 months. I would do everything I could to save $1,000 a month. Yes, I know it's expensive to live, but you should do everything possible to save $1,000 a month for 3 months. And I'd get a one-way flight to Bali. And if you got $2,000 or $3,000 to your name, you've got 6 months to figure it out in Bali because it's incredibly cheap down there. Again, I don't think there's any excuses to not leave. I think, again, this will take you back in time. When I was 17, again, homeless, moved out when I was 15, had no money. I actually lived on a loaf of white bread a day and 4 cans of tuna. Because you could get a can of tuna for about 50 cents and you could get a big loaf of white bread for like 70 cents, I think, in Australia. So I was living on $1.50 or $2.50 a day. I did that for about a year. Obviously unhealthy, but it was a sacrifice I made to buy more Bitcoin. Again, sacrifices should be made. And again, that's how dire, the Australian accent, apologies. That's how dire things are in the UK right now. Get out. But again, take action. There is one thing I would do. Now, again, something I always advocate not to do. Just whatever you do, if you're leaving, do not sell your Bitcoin to leave. I always encourage you guys to learn more about how you can borrow against your Bitcoin responsibly. Again, if you are looking to do that, Firefish is the place to do it. As you can see, you press on borrow, you can get an instant loan in an hour. It's literally that easy. All right, I want to get a 5,000 euro loan, 24-month term. There's your interest rate. Loan requests submitted. You can get funds in your bank account in an hour. That's a pretty simple way to get out of your country, even if you have no money to leave. Borrow against your Bitcoin. Firefish will even give you, I think, 30% off if you use promo code Luke. So check that out. And do it while you still can. Again, I really hope that what we're seeing in America is not the reality of the situation. I really hope they do hold 190,000 Bitcoin like they're supposed to on this website. I'm just not counting my lucky chickens. I'm incredibly skeptical that we're going to see the government buy any Bitcoin. Again, Trump's been in for a year, and what have we seen? Nothing. He's obviously better than Biden, don't get me wrong, but just be careful out there. Well, that said, there's 870 of you guys here between Twitter and YouTube Live. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to learn a little bit more on this topic and why digital IDs might be coming to you, might put a link to a recent live stream somewhere around there. I'm going to end this one here. Stay safe out there, my friends.